It has been 5 days now since the start of Operation Epic Fury. It is March 5th, 0900 Eastern Standard Time. The situation across the Mideast is chaotic as Iran stands alone against the U.S. operations to topple the IRGC. And as always, information out of chaotic situations like this remain fluid and are sometimes incorrect or exaggerated. For example, the ballistic missile that was headed towards Turkey and shot down by NATO defenses, where debris landed inside the country of Turkey, that does not automatically mean that NATO is going to enact their Article 5. There is an Article 4 process involved where the country actually calls for an Article 4 hearing to air their grievances. Article 5, they take a vote, but none of that is going to happen in this situation. What may happen is that Turkey is going to reserve the right to defend themselves, and defense can look a lot like offense in a counter-offensive type situation, but there is no NATO Article 5 in action because of something like this. And then yesterday, there was a myriad of reporting that Kurdish rebels, specifically from Iraq, were going to get involved in the war on a ground campaign, ground offensive. I myself reported on it only after every news agency reported on it. And it turns out that this is not necessarily, it's a fluid situation, as that there are groups, there are rebels within the Kurdish population that want to get involved, that are considering getting involved, that want to stay out of it. And so there's a lot of misreporting on this, as everyone is getting excited for the fact that you do need a bit of a ground campaign if you want to actually see any type of regime change. The fact the U.S. government themselves have come out and said that they are ahead of schedule, meaning they're ahead of their own timetables, everybody was basically thinking that this could be the next step, even though it's only been 5 days. And sadly, that next step is not actually necessarily baked into the unclassified plan. Right now, the plan still sits on the I believe, 4 pillars that Trump and the administration have outlined for success. That is the complete denuclearization of the IRGC and the dismantlement of their ballistic missile program, the complete dismantlement of their support for their proxies, and I believe the destruction of their ability to wage any kind of conflict is also rolled into that. So either 3 or 4 pillars, but none of it actually is official IRGC regime change. Would that be an ideal outcome? Absolutely, but I don't believe that's baked into the official unclassified plan. That doesn't mean we aren't going to effectuate every possibility to ensure that that change actually occurs. For example, we did start targeting locations on the Iraq-Iranian border. Some speculate that that is to make a pathway for ground forces that may materialize at some point during this operation. But like I said, they think they are ahead of schedule, and when you look on X or other social media sites, you can see a lot of videos of just massive bombardment, and so there's no way we would be actually moving in any type of organized resistance at that moment. We still have a lot of targets to take out. Speaking of targets taken out, it's well over 2,000 that have been struck, and most notably was the sinking of their flagship in international waters, of which somehow they've gotten out the message that they will seek revenge on, and that's what caused them to say they'll seek revenge on. We've completely destroyed their Air Force, completely destroyed their Navy, and tried all their ballistic missile launchers. There's not a whole lot left for them. With the Strait of Hormuz being reduced down to a trickle of vessels, the price of oil has now ticked up to 2024 levels at $77 a barrel. And yesterday, the Senate held a War Powers Resolution vote to restrict Trump's abilities to conduct war in Iran, and it failed largely along party lines. But really what that meant was that it was a tacit approval to continue conducting the war the way the president sees fit. Now the House is going to pick up an Iran War Powers Resolution, and I have not read into the framework of that, but I'm sure it might be written in a more positive light to support his ability to conduct war in Iran, to conduct a military conflict in Iran.